Tonight's shir is being sponsored by the Lesser family, Le'ilui Nishmas, Chaim Gershon ben Hersh Leib, Olav HaSholem, Hersh Leib ben Chaim Gershon, Olav HaSholem, Avram Zalman ben Chaim Gershon, Olav HaSholem, Baruch ben Chaim Gershon, Olav HaSholem, Ben Zion ben Baruch Abba, Olav HaSholem, who all died al Kiddush Hashem on Chof Ches Elul, Tov Reish Tzadik Tes, Hashem Yinkoim Domam. Okay, so the thing is like this. You know, the Anshe Knesset Agdola refer to Rosh Hashana as the Yom HaZikaron. That's how we sign off the Birchas Kedushas HaYom. That's how we refer to the day in Kiddush. Not so clear where this comes from. L'chayra, it's because the Torah says about Rosh Hashanah Zichroin Trua, and also calls the day Yom Trua Yelachem. And as the Ramban explains, that Zichroin Trua means Zikaron al Yedei Trua. So the function of the Trua is to bring Zikaron. So since it's a Yom Trua, it's Yom HaZikaron. You know, Chazal say, Imru lefonai zichroinos k'dei sheyalu zichroinechem lefonai letoiva. It could be that zichroinechem also has the meaning of what you remember. That will come up before me letoiva. Whatever we remember, that's how he remembers us. According to this, the avodah of the Yom HaZikaron is to connect with our past. Because man is forgetful, and not always is he in touch with the essence of himself, which is really where our beginnings are. Yeah, we get involved in so many different things, and we move away from our beginnings. The beginning of Ada is neshama shenosato bi tohoirahi ato berosa ato yitzarto ato nefachta bi. So Zikaron, in its full meaning, means that we remember where we come from, who we really are. And then it's Yalu Zichroinechem Lefonai Letoiva. The Rambam says that the Koil HaShoifer is coming to awaken those that are Shoichechim Es HaEmes B'Havlei Azman. You know, Havlei, usually we interpret as stupidities, but it doesn't really mean that. Hevel is really a lashon of vapor. I mean, it's things that have no lasting meaning are Havlei Hazman. It's the vapor that comes up from the asik in things that are time related. Emes is a consistent kiyum that doesn't change. The hepech of kozov, you know that kozov, like Rashi says in Parshas Vayeshev, on v'hoya b'chziv belideta oisoi. Rashi says al shem sheposka miledes nikra kziv loshen hoyoi tia li kimoy achzov asher lo yechazvu meimov. A river that dries up is called Nahoros HaMechazvin in the Mishnah in Porah. In other words, Kozov is something that is not La'olam, whereas Emes is something that is La'olam. Emes is the opposite of Kozov. Emes yesh loy raglayim. It's ongoing. So the engagement in Havlei Hazman brings us to be shoichechim es ha-emes. That's the Lashon Rambam, shoichechim es ha-emes b'havlei hazman. But how can we bring back our memory, so to speak? How can we awaken from the slumber of shichecha and remember once again? So probably we need to understand the root of Shechicha, and by understanding the root of Shechicha, we can work on overcoming that and Memela bringing back the Zikaron. So, you know, the Gemara says in Brachos, Or the Gemara says in Brachis, Daf Nun Ches, Omar Rav, Ein HaMeis Mishtakeach Min HaLev, Elo La'achar Yud Beis Chodesh. That when Yud Beis Chodesh pass, since the passing of a person, so he's forgotten. And where do we know this from? That it's totally in Yud Beis Chodesh. Shenemar nishkachti kemeis milev, hoyisi kechli oived. I was forgotten like a dead person is forgotten from the heart. I was like a lost keli. Masai hames mishtakeach kishu nase kechli oived. So what does that mean? That's from where we know that the shear for forgetting the mace is Yud Beis Chodesh. Rashi says, Stam kli la'achar Yud Beis Chodesh mishtakeach min halev. The Yush bailim la'achar Yud Beis Chodesh. In other words, why do we say that a person is that the shear of Shichiko is Yud Beis Chodesh? Because we see that an Aveda, as Rashi goes on to explain, an Aveda with machriz for 12 months, because after 12 months, it's understood that he was meyayish already. Yush bailam la'achar shnei mazal chodesh. And that's what the pasuk is saying, Nishkachti kemeis milev, hayisi kechli oived. It's just like the kli oived. At what point does it become forgotten from the bailam? After Yud Beis Chodesh. So also the mace is mishtakech min halev la'achar Yud Beis Chodesh. The question is, what does Yush have to do with Shichicha? Obviously, it means that as long as a person is not meyayish from the kli, it's still present in his memory. It's still on his mind. But once a person is meyayish, it's released from his mind and he forgets about it. And that's why we're saying nishkachti kemeis milev hayisi kechli oived, that a person is mishtakech min halev la'achar Yud Beis Chodesh. So it means that the yesod of Shichicha is Yush. If we are meyayish from coming back to what we once were, to the innocence that we once had, to the child that we once were, to the hevel pm shel tiloika shel b'sraba, and the be'emes memory goes back to the previous dairas, our ancestors. Memory goes back to the neshama shenasata b'tahoirahi, ata berosata yitzarta ata nefachta bi. If we're meyayish from recovering that madrega, then we forget, because Yush brings shichicha. It's no longer on our mind. As long as a person is not meyayish, even if he's not on that madrega, but he's not disconnected from that madrega, it's not erased from his memory. So the pasuk says, the pasuk says mikveh Yisrael Hashem. The meaning of this pasuk means the hope of Yisrael is the Rebbeinu Shalom. But the mission at the end of Yoima teaches it also in the sense of Maha mikveh metaris hatmeim, Afa Kodesh Baruch Hu metaris Yisrael, which is through the process of tshuva, which means that the process of tshuva is related to hope, because if a person has no hope, then he can't dip into the mikveh Yisrael Hashem. He can't do tshuva. So tikva, hope, is the opposite of yush. But even that, when we refer to Rosh Hashanah as Yom HaZikaron, a day of remembrance, it's really about it being a day of hope, because hope restores our memory. The Torah says that we say Zochreinu L'chaim. It's interesting. The Torah says Azar Loshen Ki Eitzel Chaim Shayach Loshen Zechira. Why do we say Zochreinu L'chaim Ki Eitzel Chaim Shayach Loshen Zechira? Now, what is that supposed to mean? So you know that the pasuk says in Kehelas, Kapitel Tes, Ki mi asher yechubar el hachayim yesh tikva, that a living dog has more hope than a dead lion. The pasuk says the chibur el hachayim is where tikva is. Now, since since the Yisoid of Shechicha is Yush, Nishkachti Hikli Oived, so hope is the Yisoid of Zikaron, the opposite of Yush. And therefore, Eitzel Chayim, Yesh Shayach Loshen Zechira, because Chayim is about Zechira. Like it says, Ki Ein B'Moves Zechrecha, Nishkachti Kemes. And you know that shofar has to do with Chaim, as Tosis brings in Rosh Hashanah Daf Tes Zayin, in the name of the Yerushalmi, that when the Sultan hears the shofar, he panics because he feels that maybe his time is up, because Ubila Hamoves Lonetzach, that it's the time of Tchias HaMesim, where there'll be no death anymore. So you see that the shofar really has a koyach of awakening, which touches on Tchias HaMesim. So even if somebody is in a state of nishkachti kemes, he could actually restore his memory. After the Chet HaEgel, Klal Yisrael fell into Yush. They despaired. The pasuk says, "Ki lo ya'ala b'kirbecho ki am ksheyoref oto penacholcho baderech, vayishma ha'om es hadavar hara hazeh vayis'abolu, v'lo yishosu ish edyoy olav." So they went into a state of mourning, vayis'abolu, and l'chora they didn't put their jewelry on. Then it says, "Vayoyim Hashem al Moshe, and Moirel b'nei Yisrael, atem am ksheyoref." Remove your jewelry. Then comes the third pasuk and says, which means that they took it off. Now on this last pasuk, the Gemara says in Shabbos that 120 times 10,000 Malachi Ashoris, Malachi Chabola, came and they took off the ksorim that Eden was zoiche by Matan Torah. That's what the Gemara teaches. Vayisnatzlu B'nai Yisrael's Edyom Mehar Chorev means that they lost the crowns of Matan Torah. The crowns of Matan Torah were taken away. So this was what the previous pasuk was talking about when Moshe Rabbeinu was told to tell the Yidden that they're an Am Ksheyorev Ato Hoyreid Edyicha Me'alecha. But the first pasuk says, "Vayishma Omes Adavar Hara Hazeh Vayisabolu." So they didn't have it. They didn't put it on. So the Rishonim in Chumash deal with this question, but there's a sefer Tiferes LaMoshe of Reb Moshe Misambur in Parashas Vayakel. He brings in the name of the Chayzim Elublin that he says that when it says "V'lo ish edyoy olav," it means not that they didn't put it on, but like the Loshin V'lo shos liboy gam lezois that says by Paroi. In other words, they didn't pay attention. They didn't take note of the fact that they still have the edyoy olav, because they were in such a state of vayisabolu. They understood how great the Avera was. So even though they still had the crowns, it felt like they didn't have it. They didn't take note of the crowns that they were carrying. That's the Lo Shosu Ish Yolav. And because of that, the crowns were taken away. He says that because they didn't appreciate the Madrega that they still had, therefore they lost it. Because if a person doesn't appreciate his Madrega, he loses it. And he says if they would have arisen from that Yush, and they would have realized that they still have those crowns, they could have come back to their original Madrega. In other words, when we talk about the Chet HaEgel and the ganze Yerida, Lemeshech Ala Doris of the Chet HaEgel, we're not talking about the Chet per se, but we're talking about the consequence of the Chet, the Vayisabolu, the lack of hope. The lack of hope. It's al derech what Rashi says in the end of Parashat Kiseitze on, that Amalek attacked us when we were the nechsholam acharecha. Rashi says chaseirei koyach machmas chetom shohoya ha'onan proton. The mashmor says that the chet in itself wasn't the reason that they were niflat from the oren. The reason that they were niflat from the Oren, from the Anani HaKoved, I'm sorry. The reason that they were niflat from the Anani HaKoved was because they became chaserei koyach machmas chetam. The chet brought them to a chesro in koyach. They gave up. They didn't have hope. And therefore, they were niflat from the Anani HaKoved, and therefore, Amalek was able to be poigeya in them. So, because when you have no chedva, you fall out of the Mekoyma Shel Mokim. The Anani HaKoved were Mekoyma Shel Mokim. No, and since we know that Yush brings to Shechicha, so maybe that's the pshat in the Gemara in Eruvin, Daf Nun Daled, that says Alamole nishtabru luchos hayu lemeidim Torah ve'einam mishachechim. In other words, Shviras Haluchos comes about from it brings about the Vayisabolu. And because of the Vayisabolu, they came to a point of Loishosu Ish Edyoyolov. And since they fell into a matzah of Yush, that's what brought Shichicha. Because when there's no Yush, there's no Shichicha. It's the Yush that brings Shichicha. Because as Rashi says on Nishkachti Kemeis Milei Vayisi Kechli Oivein, that when a person is Miyayish, that's when he forgets. The pasuk says, "Al titneini benefesh tzorai, ki kamu bi edei sheker v'yefeach chomos." Al titneini benefesh tzorai. Do not deliver me to the wishes of my enemies, my tormentors, because they have arisen against me. I mean, false witnesses. Ki kamu bi edei sheker. The Yefeach Chamos, they breathe violence. So we don't know exactly who are these Eidei Chamos and why are they tormenting David. And then the next pasuk says, "Lulei ha'emanti lirois b'tuv Hashem be'eretz chaim." Yeah, had I not trusted in that I would see the goodness of Hashem in the land of life, I would have been wiped out. So Rashi says, Im loishe emanti ba'Kadosh Baruch Hu. If I wouldn't have faith in the Rebbeinu Shalom, kvar kamu bi oisam edei sheker v'kiluni. But we don't know what are they saying, these edei sheker. How and why is it that if not for his strong faith, the edei sheker would wipe him out? So Bemis Rashi in Brachas Davdal Damad Aleph says, kvar tirduni miyiroscha. They would push me away. They would have driven me away from Yiras Hashem. K'mo shenemar, ki gershuni mihistapeach benachlas Hashem. Lemor lech avoid. In other words, they said to him, "You're gone from the nachlas Hashem, and go be a oived avodah zarah." So, in other words, the Eidei Sheker are telling us that we're lost, we're gone. Gershuni mihistapeach benachlas Hashem. We have no hope, and therefore they're saying Leich avoid avodah zarah, because you're Gershuni, you have no hope. So the Eidei Sheker are really the Eidos of Yush, and against these Eidim of despair, you can't come with any logical answers, because sometimes there is no logical answer to the Yush. That's why David HaMelech says, "Lulei ha'emanti lirois b'tuv Hashem be'eretz chaim." In other words, it's only with a ha'emanti. It's only with the emunah. Ha'emanti b'Kadosh Baruch Hu, as Rashi says, and that's what gave me the ability to hold on, and that's what he continues. Kavei el Hashem, chazak v'yamitz libecha, v'kavei el Hashem, afal pi sheyispalel odam v'lo yinena. Zok the Gemara in Brachas Daf Lamed Beis. Yachzev v'yispal. Shenemar kavei el Hashem, chazak v'yamitz libecha, v'kavei el Hashem. It's again about not losing hope, that knowing that even though his spalel v'lo yinena, Yachzev v'yispal. Now these 40 days that will begin with Rosh Chodesh Elul, their Indian is the tikkun of the Chet HaEgel, because the culmination of these 40 days is on Yom Kippur, the day of Matan Luchas Shnius. It's all about the tikkun of the Chet HaEgel, and during this time, we're busy with overcoming the Eidei Sheker, overcoming the Veloishosu Ish Edyoy Olov, That's what it says in Svarim. Lule Hemanti is Oisius Elo. And we're Mekayim, the Kavi El Hashem, Chazak V'yamitz Lebecha V'kavi El Hashem, that we don't lose hope, even when it seems like it's the matzav is hopeless. Yeah, we also know that these 40 days are a b'china of the Arbaim So of a mikveh, which has tough kuf samach. Sho'os connected the tough kuf samach lugin. Mikveh Yisrael Hashem, Moshiach Beis Tzora, which is mikveh Kavi El Hashem, Chazak V'yamitz Lebecha V'kavi El Hashem. So the shofar is the saneger of the Chet HaEgel. That's why we say that the shofar is not allowed to be shel zohov, because ein kategor nase saneger. That's because the shofar allows us to attach ourselves, to remember the pshuta that was before the Gnuchi Gonech and the Yilul Yol. And that gives us the hope to be mechadish Yomeinu Kekedem and reach the pshuta shel achreha. That's why the shofar, as the Medrash says, Tiku b'choyde shofar chadshu ma'asechem. The shofar brings renewal till the point of Tchias HaMeisim, as Tosfos says, in the name of the Yerushalmi. But even that, when we say that the shofar is lezikaron osi, we're really saying that the shofar is coming to instill in us hope, because hope is what gives us zikaron, and the Yom HaZikaron is the Yom of Tikva. And that also connects with the Kriyas HaYom, Hashem Pokad Esora, which is about the Edna of Achrei Baloisi, the hope of after we despair. The entire Klal Yisrael came into this world in a matzav of Achrei Baloisi, Hoysa Li Edna. Yes, so Tzoik Osali Elokim. So Mamela, we have a reason to be hopeful, and the truth is that the Yush that we have is not just a Zaitige Teitzah of the Chet, but it's part of the Oynish, because it says by the Chet Teitzadas, V'itzavoin toichlena kol yemei chayecha. You know, we see in history that as the world progresses and we have less of the bezeas apecha toichalechem, we're not standing out in a farm on a hot day, most of us, and toiling in physical labor, the less bezeas apecha toichalechem there is, the more the b'itzavain toichlena there is. I mean, it hasn't been a time in human history that there's so much b'itzavain toichlena that Mistam is connected with the fact that we got rid a little bit of the bezeas apecha toichalechem. So the big nisayon of Achris Hayomim is really the atzvus and the yush, and to believe that we are still shaykh to toiv, and we should remember who we really are, and that every machshava dibur ma'aseh of us is consequential, makes a difference, because we are b'tzelem elokim aseh Adam, and on the day of man's creation we connect to our beginnings. That's the Yom HaZikaron. You know that in the Heintige Parsha it says that right? Who is this? The Shorish Pere Rosh Velana. V'hoya b'shama is divrei ha'olah hazois v'izbarech b'lavavai leimar shalom yeli ki b'shrirus li b'yelech l'man svayis harova es atzmeya. So we're talking about somebody really bad, right? The Shorish Pere Rosh Velana, and he like blesses himself. Rashi says v'izbarech b'lavavai loshen bracha yachshiv b'liboy birchas shalom la'atzmai. It won't happen to me, yeah? But the Targum Yonasan ben Azil says, V'yehei b'mishmei yas pisgomoi meimosa hado v'yisyo'esh b'libei l'meimer shloma yiyeli. It'll be meyayish. How in the world did the Targum Yonasan ben Azil teach v'yisborech v'yisyayish? I think Mistama the Pshat is because it's Miloshin Nivrecha, which is the Lashon of kneeling. When a person Nivrachol Hashem Oseinu. Yes, so V'ezbarech means that he'll become all nivrach. Yeah, he'll his heart will sink, and he'll be in a total yush. That's the V'ezbarech B'Vavai. So how does that lead to Shalom Yeli? Yeah, that's like, you throw in the towel. I mean, the guy's in Gansam Yush, he doesn't feel that he can really get back on the right track. So Avada, the next thing is, I mean, listen, if it's impossible, so I'm just gonna forget about the whole thing, right? So that really all is rooted in Yush. I mean, so and that's on every madrega. There can be somebody that he becomes an Avodah, but it's on every madrega because we all have things that we're better in, things that we're schwacher in, and some things we give up on, and when it comes to the Yom HaZikaron, which is the day of hope, we are meant to connect, and we have a siyata d'shmaya to connect with our original self, and be'emes, and lead a life on a higher level for the next year. So, Rabbi Say, I wish you all aksiva v'chasima toiva. Yeah, and I want to share the great news that my daughter Baruch Hashem Batsheva became a kala, and hoidul Hashem ki toiv kili yolam chasdoi, and it should be tichla shona v'kiloiser tochel shona uvir choiser.